So first of all, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
The factories reopened, employed men returned to their jobs, and America's sick industry took a turn for the better.
In 1933, Roosevelt and Congress enacted the National Industrial Recovery Act, also known as the NRA. The act suspended antitrust laws and allowed business, labor, and government to cooperate in setting up voluntary rules for each industry. These codes set prices, established minimum wages, and then limited factories to 2 shifts per day so that production could be spread to as many firms as possible. Factory owner Jimmy Neutron weighs in on the changes that occurred in the factory because of the NRA.
Gosh darn, the NRA done messed me up. I can't afford to pay a ton of people. Now they make me pay from a certain amount and they can only do that for a short time. No way did I sign up to be a part of it, which has for sure took my customers away.
The Supreme Court had great intentions for this project.
As a Supreme Court Justice, I can tell you there has been a great deal of controversy about the legality of the NRA and its precursor legislation. Specifically, there have been a lot of people who have called into question whether this legislation exceeds the scope of Congress's powers under the U.S. Constitution. How much power does the Congress have to pass laws that regulate details of our economic activity and growth? Never before in our history has the Supreme Court been called upon to rule upon the constitutional legality of such widespread and expansive legislation that affects every single business in the country and virtually all of this country's economic activity. I can tell you, however, that under the Commerce Clause of the United States Constitution, our court is comfortable with the prospect of the government having the legal right to pass these laws. That Commerce Clause gives the federal government the right to regulate commerce. And fundamentally, that's what these laws do, with the stated purpose of trying to help this country recover from its greatest economic catastrophe that it has ever experienced. There are many details about this legislation which will go unanswered by the courts. And therefore, the government, partnering with private enterprise and local businesses, will have to sort of come up with its own policy and practicality in implementing this legislation. The courts will never rule on specific actions of the government, but we can only tell you as a whole the legislation passes constitutional muster. And therefore, from a policy perspective, although courts typically don't like to rule on policy or make recommendations about it, my associate justices and I firmly believe that this partnership between the federal government and United States business is a good thing. And therefore, I heartily recommend that business owners partner up, sign up, and put up those signs.
Small businesses and the unemployed benefited from this program. The unemployed were able to get jobs since the hours had to be shortened for others. Small businesses who signed the agreement were able to gain more money since people were buying more products from them.
Thank God for the NRA. I dropped out of school to try and make a living for my family, but I had no idea that working in a factory would force me to work long hours of abuse with barely any pay. With the NRA, I am now protected and can work hours with equal fair pay. Also, everyone is paid the same, so I'm not working long hours for such little money.
Unfortunately, the NRA was very short-lived as some businesses ignored the act and did not agree to sign. The agency ultimately established 557 basic codes and 208 supplementary codes that affected about 22 million workers.